Looks like we've arrived at that point. So we will call to order the regular meeting of the West Valley City Council. We note that all council members are present. Full quorum. With that then, we'll begin with another one of our police department video series. And so there we go.
Speeding, graffiti, property crimes. They may not be speeding, graffiti, property crimes. They may not be the most serious offenses, but if they're happening in your neighborhood, they can be a serious problem.
It might not seem that big of a deal if there's a parking problem, or if there's a loud neighbor, or there's somebody who's consistently, speeding in their neighborhood, but it's a big deal to the people who live in that neighborhood. That's where COP comes in, because it's now a big deal to them.
COP stands for Community-Oriented Police, a special unit within the West Valley City Police Department that's dedicated to serving the needs of the city's neighborhoods.
You're on it, and that's amazing.
It's good to know. We need to know.
My name is Renee Leighton. I have lived in Diamond Summit in West Valley for about 20 years. In 2005, I was concerned with just a few things like speeding and graffiti in the neighborhood. And so I called West Valley City Police Department and said, here's my concerns, what can I do?
Renee began partnering with the COP unit. 15 years later, that connection between her neighborhood and her neighborhood COP officer is stronger than ever.
We get to go around and help out at schools, at businesses, in neighborhoods, and pretty much kind of anything that needs a little extra attention is what we get to do.
Unlike patrol officers, the COP unit is not tied to the 911 system. These officers have the ability to focus on building relationships and tailoring their efforts to the specific needs of the neighborhoods they serve.
We can research, we can find out the problems, see if there's any patterns. We can work with our intelligence unit, who is able to pull up a lot of the data and information so that the neighbors can know what's going on.
Some of the most rewarding aspects of COP is the partnership we have with our community members and the ability to sit down and really listen to them and their needs and to help solve their problems.
It's worked in Renee Leighton's neighborhood.
That is essential for me to be able to have that communication, that I can talk to her about the needs of our neighborhood, and that I know that she's really good at responding quickly to what our concerns are and addressing them and following up.
And the COP unit is ready to go to work for you.
And really that's all we're there for. We want to be out there. We want to involve the neighbors, the neighborhood, the people that in our city. We want them to work with us to solve these issues.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, by the way, just one comment on that one. I saw the one officer putting food in the back of a car, an SUV. Wasn't quite sure what they were trying to say with that one. I didn't know if it was his car or someone else's. So I'm guessing maybe it was someone else's car.
It's under investigation.
Great.
I think it was one of the community meetings the chief was having, and so they were breaking it down afterwards and putting stuff back to bring back to the city.
Neither one of the things I suspected. Okay.
Helping with the food pantry, Mayor. The chief just sent me a text.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Sometimes we don't think of how normal people might look at those and think. So anyway, but still a great message that is put forth by community-oriented policing. Next, we have our minutes of August 25th, a motion on the minutes.
Move for approval of the minutes.
Second.
Hearing no further comments, then we will have the minutes approved without objection. Hearing no objection, it is unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have our comment period. Nicole, do we have anyone online, or how many do we have online for public comment tonight?
We have one member here for public comment during the general period, and then we do have someone that would like to speak to the public hearings on the agenda. The first person for the general public comment period is Jim Visock. And Jim, you are good to go.
Good evening, Mayor. I love the comment, and all joking aside, there'll probably be a blurb on Channel 2's news. West Valley Mayor accuses police of taking something. You know how they are. We don't need any controversy with our police officers, especially our great police department. I wanted to say something about our great fire department and how they've stepped up for the state of California. Lots of pictures, scary pictures in my eyes when I see some of those flames and stuff coming from. And I wanted to give a shout out to them for the great job and going out there and the 24-hour shifts or longer that they're putting in. I wanted to give an attaboy out to them. That's all I had tonight.
Thank you. There's no one else, Nicole?
No, sir.
Thank you. Then to our city manager, any comments?
I'm good, Mayor. Thank you. No comment.
Council members? Having heard Mr. Visock's comments, I guess I should clarify. It never entered my mind that our police officer was doing anything wrong, nor was he doing anything wrong. My attempt was to say that sometimes the video doesn't always show it properly, because all of the good things our police officers do. And there is never an intent. I have an extremely high regard for our police officers. Rely on them a great deal, not just to keep our city safe, but on a very personal level to keep me and my family safe. And they do a great job. So hopefully there won't be any news stories on that. And if they do, they need to get it right. With that, then we go to our public hearings. We'll begin first with application ZT-4-2020, was filed by Bruce Smith and Fred Cox, requesting a change to one of our ordinances to allow minimum zoning district size for C2 zone to be less than 5 acres. In conjunction with that is ordinance 20-36 to enact that. With that, click on the right one here. In the past, parcels to be rezoned had to be 5 acres that were and adjacent as well, of course, to other C2 zones. And let's see, this change would allow property that is adjacent and is zoned manufacturing to be included with property zone C2 to meet the minimum district size for the C2 zone. And according to our staff, the M zone allows many of the same uses as allowed in the C2 zones. The minimum district size was geared towards preventing spot zoning, where small pieces of property are different from everything around it. So that's the general introduction to that. Any comments the council want to add in that introduction? If not, then we will open public comment on this application. Nicole? Do we have someone to comment on this?
We do. We have the applicant present, Fred Cox. Fred, you can go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. I had originally proposed something a little bit more narrow. We looked at the possibility of allowing a dentist's office, for example, in a manufacturing zone. That actually affected a lot of properties. The other thing that we looked at was this is in the property that we're looking at, which is on the corner of 5600 West and 2455 South, is in an overlay zone. And we tried to tie it to that. Across the street, almost across the street, there was recently a property similar size that was rezoned C2, but it happens to be almost next to the Winco. And that property was rezoned C2 for the same reason. Somebody wanted to put a medical office in a building, which is not allowed in a manufacturing zone. And in working with Steve, he suggested that because of the fact that the manufacturing zones and the C2s in many cases have similar uses, that we look at the possibility of this particular parcel that we're trying to rezone. And if this is approved, the next item on the agenda is in a manufacturing zone, but that manufacturing zone has had places like Target and other commercial projects along 5600 West. So we believe that this particular parcel, converting it to a C2, which would allow that dentist office, the current owner of the property is a dentist, and he recently purchased the property and asked if he could put a medical office there. And I said, well, not currently. So we started talking to staff, and this was something that they felt like would be the least impactful and still fairly narrow without being as narrow as what I proposed. But the previous owner had sold the parcel just north of this, which turned into a gas station and restaurants, something that could have been in either a manufacturing or a C2 zone. And so we're not, it really, if you look around the area, there are other C2 zones, but there is a manufacturing zone immediately around it. And so we couldn't rezone it to be a C2 without the text change, if that makes any sense at all.
I assume that concludes your remarks.
Yeah, I probably should have said my name is Fred Cox and I live at 4466 Early Duke Street in West Valley City. And I'm an architect and representing the current owner, Neil Gupta.
Thank you. Are there any other people wanting to comment on this, Nicole?
No, sir, there is not.
Okay, then we will close the public comment portion on this and bring it back to the council. Mr. Pyle, was there any additional information the staff had uncovered on this about the original intent or reasons for setting this up originally?
Let me ask Nicole and Steve. Sir, I was just reviewing the memo that Steve sent out, but he or she might have some further comment as well.
Steve Pastrick, your microphone is now unmuted.
Thank you. So in the email that I sent out to the council, just a little bit of background. So we found that the 5-acre minimum district size was put into effect in 1987. Unfortunately, the meeting minutes for both Planning Commission, City Council had really no detail as to why the 5-acre minimum was put into effect. And so we included in that email some of the reasons we felt that it was or why it's a benefit and why the city has that standard. So first is that when the C2 zone was first established, it was really put in to offer locations for a range of office, retail, and other service uses. So by having at least 5 acres of property, you increase the chances of getting a variety of tenants or a variety of uses as opposed to just a single use. Another would be that as you look at streets like 4100 South, for example, we've really tried to keep the commercial around major intersections like Redwood Road, 5600 West. And so by having that 5 acre minimum district size, it discourages having these mid-block commercial developments along a street like 4100 South. Another one, if you think about another zone where we have restrictions. So in the RM zone, or the zone for multifamily residential, the city has implemented or adopted several years ago criteria to be able to say, okay, this property is or is not eligible for RM zoning. So that really prevents someone from applying for RM zoning in a location where the city is really just not interested in that use. And so this, in a similar way, basically prevents a rezone to C2 in locations where we really don't want just a single parcel going to C2. And then finally, the fourth point that I included in the email is we have a principle in our general plan that says this, or a guiding principle we call it. It says, instead of rezoning more ground for retail, the city should encourage new retail development on existing vacant ground zone commercial and on aging and or underdeveloped retail areas. So finally, by keeping a minimum district size, that helps steer new commercial to existing commercial areas. So, and really by allowing the manufacturing zone to count towards that, it just, in staff's view, it doesn't undermine that purpose.
Thank you. I was just searching my email to see if I could see your email, but I don't, and I didn't see it. But then this has been a bad week for me. My internet went down, and when I'm home, I automatically have my phone and that go over that rather than over the air because I get better reception. But so I'm glad he gave me that summary. Anything else, council?
Just a comment. When we did discuss this quite a bit last week, why we wouldn't just change the zone to include a dentist's office and the reasons for that, which made sense to me. And this seemed to be a more reasonable resolution without any downside that I see. And then the issue was brought up if we shouldn't include the possibility of C1 zoning next to C2 zoning, counting the same as manufacturer zoning would, so that it would all be part of that amalgamation that permits a C2 zone. And staff seemed to be okay, if not in favor of doing that as well. Since that was a new idea, I don't know if there's any further analysis that's been done or reason to do that or not do that from the staff perspective.
Steve?
So am I still unmuted there? Okay.
There you go. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So I do remember that comment, and what I recall the fall discussion was that the C3 zone, which is a zone that's between C2 and M, we were leaning more towards that because the C1 zone is actually more restrictive than C2. So as staff, we would be supportive of including C3 zone property and meeting the minimum district size.
Yes, I misspoke again. I had him wrong last week and wrong again this week. So it would be the C3 zone that's between C2 and M.
Correct. And as staff, we don't see an issue with that, of adding C3.
Any further comments?
I'll go ahead and make a motion then that we approve ordinance 20-36 with the addition that C3 zoning be included just like the M zoning for amalgamation and purposes of determining the acreage.
Second.
Properly before us, any further comments? Hearing none. We go to our city recorder for the official roll call vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing again. This will be on application Z-5 2020 filed by Bruce Smith, Fred Cox, requesting a zone change from manufacturing to C2 general commercial on property at 5571 West, 2455 South. I actually drove by that property, and it makes a lot of sense to me to do that. It seems it would add to the location. So kind of interesting. By the way, we will consider in conjunction with that ordinance 20-37, which will be how we manage that change. With that introduction, anything else from the council to add to it? Hearing none, we will open the public input portion. We'll turn to Nicole Kamick to see if there's anyone online.
Yes, sir, we do have Fred Cox. I wasn't sure if he wanted to add additional comment, but Fred, you are now unmuted.
Thank you. Fred Cox, 4466 Early Duke Street, West Valley City. This happens to be at an intersection, and it's on 5600 West. And as you mentioned, it's in a location that made sense to go commercial. Over the years, this property and the property just north of that, there have been a number of attempts to develop, and the current situation had made life a little bit more difficult than the developers had been able to pull off. In this case, we've got a new owner that is planning on developing it, and the C2 will work because he can put a dentist office there as well as other items that are appropriate for a C2.
Thank you. And there's no one else?
No,
Nicole?
sir.
Okay. With that, we'll close the public hearing portion and bring it back to the council for further discussion or action.
Mayor, I'd move for approval of ordinance 20-37.
Second.
Properly before us, any further comments? Hearing none. We will turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we go to item 8, our resolutions. We'll begin with resolution 20-138, renew West Valley City's commitment to being idle-free. Our youth council brought forward a suggestion to highlight this issue, not only as a good public policy, but also to improve our air quality. And although in the past we have done a resolution and supported it, this one is a little more detailed and represents a commitment to supporting it and encouraging our citizens of West Valley, all the residents of West Valley, to do what they can to remain idle-free. This does become a problem in some areas. The one that I personally have noted the most have been at schools when they're waiting to pick up their children, and everyone sits there for 10, 15 minutes idling their vehicles while they are parked. And so hopefully this will have some influence on that. That's the introduction to it, to the council for further comments or action.
Move to approve resolution 20-138.
Second.
Properly before us. Any further comments? Hearing none, then we'll turn to our city recorder.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang.
Yes.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilman Hune.
Aye.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we go to resolution 20-139. This is to approve a memorandum of understanding between with the National Recreation and Park Association. What it is, they have authorized a grant for West Valley City of $66,000 to be used at Parkway Park, and it will be used in a number of ways. It doesn't even require a match. It is simply a grant to work on that park through such things as the courts that are there, basketball, tennis, pickleball, game zone, a pollinator garden, additional trees, recycled benches, graphic design signage, and informal programming. And so quite a nice thing. That is the introduction to it, to the council.
Mayor, I'd move for approval of resolution 20-139. Second.
Properly before us, any further comments? Hearing none, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt.
Yes.
Councilman Christensen.
Yes.
Councilman Hune.
Aye.
Councilman Bueller.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang.
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
And Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have application SMI-2-2020 filed by Elliott Smith. This is final plat approval for the Terraform Commercial Subdivision at 4700 South, 5600 West. And this is the property on the northwest corner. It will, there's approximately a 1 acre size is the plan on the corner, and then the remaining lot will be approximately 4 acres. And preliminary proposals indicate that a new 7-Eleven store may be placed there. That's currently being reviewed. And then, of course, they're working with UDOT, since that is a state road, 5600 West, regarding access off of 5600 West. They'll certainly have access off of 4700 South. And so that is the introduction to the issue to the council.
Move for approval of application SMI-2-2020.
Second.
Properly before us. Any further comments? Hearing none, then we will turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu.
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang.
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next, we have application SMI-3 filed by Scott Helm. This is again final plat approval for what is called Phil's Farm Subdivision, 4180 South, 4625 West. This particular piece of property is somewhat on the inside of some subdivisions there. It'll be 7 lots of approximately 2.4 acres. The lots will range from just under 1,100 square feet to almost 11,000, thank you, to almost 16,000. I'll get the second half right. And so there's access to it from an existing subdivision. Don't know that there's a lot more that needs to be mentioned on that. It's been vacant for a number of years. And there's a ditch that'll need to be piped, but it's working out. And in fact, that's Lars' old subdivision there where he was very familiar with it. But I'm being familiar with it as well, not too far from there. Nice to have that finally finished out, leaving only one more large piece of ground on close there on 4800 South that still needs to be developed. That is the introduction to the issue to the council.
Mayor, I'd move for approval of SMI 3 2020.
Second.
Properly before us. Any further comments? Hearing none, we'll turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Now we have our consent agenda. We have 5 items on there. These are our typical resolutions for improvements to our infrastructure. The first one, 2140, is a public sidewalk easement and 2159 South Constitutional Boulevard, part of the 2700 West project, resolution 20-141, storm drain easement on 4800 West, resolution 20-142, temporary construction easement, again on 4800 West. Resolution 20-143, a wide right-of-way purchase, warranty deed and temporary construction easement on South Marcus Road. I believe that's with our asphalt overlay project. And resolution 20-144, warranty deed, temporary construction easement, property on South Market Street. And so those are the 5 items on our consent agenda. Their introduction to the council.
Mayor, I move for approval of the 5 items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Properly before us, not hearing any further comments, to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
Aye.
Councilman Hune,
Aye.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is some older business that was continued from a previous meeting. This is on application C-4-2020, filed by the Nailers a zone change from agricultural to Business Research Park on property at 1078 West Parkway Avenue. And so this particular property is 0.8 acres. Let's see, around it is agricultural to the south, east, and a portion of the north, and Business Research Park to the west of the remaining north portion. There's Islamic Center to the south, Metro Business Park buildings to the west. North is a Salt Lake County Park on part of it, and the rest is vacant. The rest of the property there is vacant. Anyway, shows a 6,000 square foot cabinet assembly plant and warehouse building as a potential use for that. That is the introduction to it. This will, let's see, we'll also do ordinance 20-29 in conjunction with it. Now, I believe even though we've had a public hearing before, once it's brought back, I believe we need to open it for a public hearing. Is that correct, Mr. Pyle?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. Since there's been some further discussion on that and some time has passed, with that then, I will open the public hearing portion on this and turn to our city recorder. Is there anyone online to make comment on this?
It looks like Fred Cox would like to speak on this item. Fred, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you. Fred Cox, 4466 Early Duke Street, West Valley City. Looking at your map, it makes all the sense in the world to approve it as long as the Islamic Center to the south didn't object. I obviously wasn't part of your previous public comment, but map makes sense for that zone to continue.
Thank you. And he was the only one, so we will close the public comment portion and come back to the council.
Mayor, I would move for approval of ordinance 20-29.
It's properly before us. Any further discussion?
I'd like to say something about this, and if it's all right, I'll share my screen. I've been thinking a lot about this and hoping to make the right decision here. And I can share here. Here's some images from Google Earth. We're talking about the property right here in the middle, and next to Business Park makes sense. I just wanted to show, you know, we have a lot of people who come to visit the mosque from outside of our city. And when they pull out of the driveway here, this is what they see. Let's see if I can.
You're doing great.
So this is the property that we're talking about here. I don't know if you can see the barrels and the shopping cart. This is Business Research Park property. And if this is approved, they would move the sidewalk and curb and gutter across, and they'd have to follow our standards for building and for landscape. And so instead of the visitor seeing this site, you know, they would see something much better, I would think, coming out of this driveway. And if we don't approve it, I don't know that it would change much from what it is right to there. So that's why I second and I encourage the rest of us to vote for this.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Hearing none, then we will turn to our city recorder for the vote.
Councilman Fitzie Umanu,
Aye.
Councilwoman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Bueller,
No.
Councilman Hune,
No.
Councilman Christensen,
Yes.
Councilman Nordfelt,
Yes.
and Mayor Bigelow.
Nay.
Motion
No.
passes by majority.
Thank you. That was the last item on our agenda. We do not have a need for a closed session. Thank you for spending the time with us and those who participated in our meeting from the public. With that, then, we are done until next week.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Without objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing no objection, we are adjourned. Have a nice week.
Thank you.